The woman I'd spent 5 years caring for, my simple-minded wife, suddenly transformed into a ruthless and decisive corporate powerhouse. And the first thing she did after her recovery was to demand a divorce, all to make way for her true love. What she didn't know was that I couldn't have been happier about her proposal. The first thing Sophia did when she got back from the hospital was slap a set of divorce papers down in front of me and tell me to sign. Perhaps to avoid being called ungrateful, she had added a clause at the end, effective in 1 year. That meant I had to play the part of her husband for another 12 months. Seeing that, I had to hand it to Sophia for her sheer audacity. If my ancestors had tried to build a fortress out of her nerve, they could have saved a lot on bricks and mortar. My parents, however, kept telling me not to be upset with Sophia. They argued that all wealthy people have affairs, and as long as she didn't bring him home, I should just look the other way. "Liam, why are you making such a fuss?" my mother said. "Just stay by her side. Once she gets tired of her little games, she'll come back to you." I just shook my head and laughed coldly. "You'd rather believe that woman's nonsense than believe I'm the secret heir to the British throne? Mom, Dad, you have no idea how disappointed I am. If Sophia had any feelings for me, those divorce papers would never have seen the light of day." Back when Sophia was fighting for control of the family corporation, she was sabotaged in a car accident that supposedly damaged her brain, turning her into a simpleton with the mental age of a 5-year-old. From a pool of heirs from other prominent families, she chose me, a regular guy from a working-class background, to be her nominal husband. Bound by that marriage contract, I dedicated myself to taking care of her for 5 long years. But looking back, it was probably all part of her grand scheme. The battle for succession at the Thompson Corporation was treacherous. Yet she, the supposed simpleton, watched safely from the sidelines and emerged as the ultimate victor. Now that she had achieved her goal, she no longer needed to keep up the charade with a commoner like me. The night before she officially took over as CEO, she wore a custom designer gown that made her look regal and impossibly distant. Every move she made suggested that the entire world was under her control. She called my name, her voice flat and detached. "Liam," in that single word, the sweet, simple girl who used to shyly clutch the hem of my shirt and call my name was completely gone. Sophia must have been afraid I'd refuse to leave, because even though she was the one making me stay for a year, she constantly warned me not to get any ideas about things that weren't mine. And so, I, the husband in name only, was forced to watch Sophia and her precious first love parade their affection right in front of me every single day. The day Evan moved into Sophia's mansion, the entire place was decked out in celebratory decorations, looking for all the world like they were about to get married right then and there. Living up to her new CEO persona, Sophia spared no expense, showering Evan with expensive custom suits and high-end sports cars. It made me think of my own wedding to Sophia, a rushed, sloppy affair thrown together because she was supposedly a simpleton who didn't know any better. Sophia worried that others might look down on Evan, so she made a great show of her favoritism toward him in public. Anyone who didn't know the situation would have assumed he was her real husband. Not that it mattered. My title of husband had always been a sham anyway. Ever since Sophia took over the Thompson Corporation, she and Evan were constantly together, and it was as if I had ceased to exist. I was playing a game online with my friend Mark, and he was still fuming on my behalf over voice chat. I had to laugh at how worked up he was. "You seem more pissed off about this than I am," Mark scoffed. "Dude, I've known you since we were kids. You think I don't know what you're like? Even when people are walking all over you, you just take it with that same stoic expression. Anyone with eyes can see how you've treated Sophia for the past few years. When people were calling her a moron to her face, you were the one who defended her. Think of all the ridicule and contempt you've put up with because of her. And now, for some other guy, she treats you like this? She's a shameless, ungrateful jerk," Mark went on, his voice rising with righteous anger as he listed all of Sophia's wrongdoings. I knew my friends were furious about what was happening to me, but honestly, I didn't really care how Sophia treated me. At most, I felt a fleeting sense of melancholy at how much things had changed. So I changed the subject, steering the conversation to something else. "I've been thinking about getting a job again," I said. "Got any leads?" "Actually, my company's hiring," he replied. "You majored in business administration, right? You should come in for an interview. And I'm not gonna lie, our boss is gorgeous. Who knows, you might even hit it off with her." The moment he mentioned his boss, Mark's energy shifted, and he launched into a description of how she was an absolute knockout, a true classic beauty. He even compared her to Sophia, going on about how this woman was loyal, considerate, and had real integrity. If I didn't know Mark so well, I'd have sworn his boss paid him to set us up. I just laughed. Yeah, let's hope you're right. I didn't really pay much attention to what Mark was saying. I was just focused on the fact that my contract with Sophia had less than a year left. As long as there were no complications, my life would finally get back to normal. But even when you're not looking for trouble, sometimes trouble finds you. I was just about to head out the door when I walked right in on Sophia and Evan wrapped around each other in the living room. The two of them were swapping spit, and my presence as an outsider was definitely not welcome. I turned to leave, but Evan suddenly called out, "Well, if it isn't Liam, where are you off to?" This was the first time I'd actually spoken to Evan face to face. He was undeniably handsome, probably in his early 20s, with a pair of bright, cunning eyes that were incredibly alluring. If I were a woman, I could see the appeal, the urge to pull him into an embrace. But my attention was immediately drawn to the very obvious hickeys on his collarbone. It wasn't hard to imagine what he and Sophia had been doing last night. In fact, I didn't need the visual confirmation. The three of us lived under the same roof, and the sounds that carried to my room each night were perfectly clear. At Evan's words, Sophia turned as if just noticing me, her expression clouded with annoyance. It looked like I had well and truly interrupted them. I knew better than to approach, so I just offered an apology from a distance. "I was just heading out to grab some food. Sorry to interrupt. I'm leaving now." But Evan wasn't about to let it go. He nuzzled his cheek against Sophia's hand, looking down with a wounded expression. "Does Liam hate me? He tries to leave the second he sees me. Did I do something wrong?" Hearing this, Sophia immediately placated him with a kiss. "Nobody in the world could dislike you, Evan." Then she shot me a nasty look. "Get over here and apologize to him now." I did as I was told, walking over with my head bowed, trying to make myself as small as possible, fully intending to just be a silent part of the scenery. "Sophia," Evan whined, "am I so ugly that Liam can't even bear to look at me?" As if the situation wasn't awkward enough, Evan put on his best damsel in distress act. He wrapped his arms around Sophia's neck, ready to give an award-winning performance of being utterly heartbroken. "Don't be ridiculous. My Evan is the most adorable man in the world. Anyone who can't see how charming you are must be blind." She said this while staring directly at me, making it perfectly clear who the blind person in her little analogy was. It was a look I knew all too well. Back when Sophia and I first got married, her cousin Jessica tried to intimidate her by publicly provoking her at a family gathering. After I shut her down with a few sarcastic remarks, she flew into a rage and raised her hand to slap me. But the Sophia from back then stepped in front of me, glaring fiercely at Jessica and shouting, "Nobody bullies my Liam." The look in her eyes then, directed at Jessica, was the exact same look she was giving me now. Cold, disgusted, and full of warning. I just never thought the sweet, simple girl who promised to protect me would one day be using that same fierce protectiveness for someone else. I just stood there, saying and doing nothing, yet somehow I was the one being blamed for hating Evan. Sophia's blatant favoritism made Evan's face light up. He gave her a playful, coquettish glance. "I knew you were the best to me, Sophia." "Of course," I chimed in, hoping to get out of there. "Mr. Hayes and Ms. Thompson are so devoted to each other. Anyone can see you're a perfect match." I was just agreeing with him so I could leave that toxic situation as quickly as possible. But maybe it was just my imagination, because after I said it, Sophia's stare seemed to get even colder. Did my words remind her of the humiliation she must have felt back when she had to play the part of a timid fool? My mind started to drift, but I knew better than to make waves right now. In complete contrast to Sophia, Evan was thrilled with my response. "You really know just what to say, Liam. Weren't you going out for food? You should go. Don't let yourself get hungry." Seeing my chance to escape, I quickly smiled and said, "Well, I won't disturb you two any longer. I'll get going." Through it all, Sophia remained silent, her entire focus on the man in her arms. This was exactly what I expected. I just wanted this year to fly by so I could finally be rid of them for good. What I didn't notice as I left, however, was the strange, deep look in Sophia's eyes as she watched me walk away. There was an unreadable emotion there, but she hid it so well. Even Evan just assumed she was angry that I'd interrupted them, completely missing her momentary lapse. When I got back home, Evan was gone. I glanced around the living room and didn't see Sophia either. I figured they probably wouldn't be back tonight, but just as I started up the stairs, a low, cold voice cut through the silence from behind the sofa. "I had no idea my absence would make you so happy." I turned to see Sophia leaning against the sofa, her face a cold mask, her eyes dark and dangerous. "Who sits in a pitch-black room, wearing all black, just lurking on a sofa?" I grumbled to myself but put on a surprised face as I walked over to her. "Sophia, why are you sitting in the dark?" She suddenly grabbed my shoulder. "Liam, have you forgotten that we're still married?" She looked furious, and I figured she was still angry that I'd walked in on her and Evan earlier. I had no idea how to handle her like this and didn't want to start a fight, so I just braced myself and replied, "Of course I remember. But don't worry, Sophia. Today was an accident. I'll be more careful next time not to interrupt you and Mr. Hayes." The expression on Sophia's face grew even darker. She let out a strange, humorless laugh and placed her hand on my waist. I could feel the heat of her palm right through my shirt. "Liam, I seem to recall you once promised you would never betray me, that you would never leave me. Is that right?" "Yes," I said, lowering my gaze to meet her aggressive stare. "But we've already signed divorce papers. Those promises don't really apply anymore." "What's this? All this feigned indifference lately, was that just to remind me about the divorce? Or have you actually fallen in love with me? If you have, no. Sophia, I think you're mistaken. Our marriage was nothing more than a part of your plan from the very beginning. How could a business partner possibly develop feelings for his associate?" Sophia stared at me, her eyes deep and unreadable, making it impossible to guess what she was thinking. And she still held my family's fate in her hands, the very leverage she'd used to force me into playing along for another year. "Fine. Very good," Sophia said, suddenly letting go of me. She sneered, "You'd better remember what you just said. Liam, I trust you know what's good for you. That being the case, for this last year, you will fulfill your duties as my husband." I had always assumed that even without any real affection between us, she would at least show some decency, considering I had spent 5 years taking care of her. But Sophia's sudden rage seemed to come out of nowhere. My first thought was that Evan must have said something bad about me to her, but that didn't make sense either. Evan's hostility toward me stemmed from the fact that I'd been Sophia's husband for 5 years. He couldn't be sure what my position in her life really was. After today's little test, he had gotten the reassurance he needed, so I figured he wouldn't go out of his way to antagonize me again. "I understand." I followed Sophia into the master bedroom, but by the time I came out of the bathroom, she was already fast asleep. The only light in the room came from a small nightlight on the wall. It was a habit she'd developed after the accident. Even during those 5 years when she was playing the simpleton, with me right there beside her, she always insisted I leave a light on. I watched her sleep for a long moment before carefully lying down on the far side of the bed. I expected to lie awake all night, but in the quiet darkness, a heavy drowsiness soon washed over me. I had a dream. In it, I was on a beach, holding a girl's hand as we laughed and ran along the shore. I knew it was a memory from before my forced marriage to Sophia. The girl in the dream was the one who vanished from my life the day I said, "I do." For all these years, no matter how hard I tried, I could never find any trace of her. Just as the dream was getting sweeter, a sudden chill ran down my spine. I jolted awake to find Sophia propped up against the headboard, staring at me intently. I was so startled I could barely think. Then I heard her cold voice cut through the silence. "Who gave you permission to sleep in my bed? I let you in here to serve me. You can't even do that right. You're useless. Get out." This new Sophia, the one who wasn't pretending anymore, was incredibly volatile. I couldn't begin to understand her, but I was more than happy to not share a room with her. I scrambled out of bed, still groggy from sleep, and nearly stumbled right into the nightstand. Luckily, I just staggered for a moment before catching my balance and leaving the room without a backward glance. Because of that, I completely missed the sight of Sophia's hand reaching out toward me, only to freeze halfway. The next morning, Sophia left for the office early. She had already purged the company of any opposition with ruthless efficiency on the day she took over. But her cousin Jessica wasn't one to give up easily, and she had plenty of old guard shareholders stirring up trouble for Sophia behind the scenes. Fortunately for Sophia, she had the backing of the Hayes family. Without them, securing her position at the Thompson Corporation would have been much more difficult. As for me, I hadn't slept well, so when I met up with Mark, the first thing he noticed were the dark circles under my eyes. "Dude, what happened to you?" Mark asked. "You look like you were up all night pulling a heist." "Just couldn't sleep," I said, making an excuse. "It's been a while since I've been on the job market, so I stayed up polishing my resume." "Don't kill yourself over it," Mark said, clapping me on the shoulder. "With your skills, you'll definitely kill it at our company." I was confident in my own abilities. I just had a sudden thought. Sophia had stayed home last night. Even though nothing happened between us, in Evan's eyes, it would look like a provocation. I had a feeling he'd be coming to find me. Sure enough, right after I finished my interview and was leaving with Mark, one of Evan's bodyguards approached me. "Mr. Miller, my employer would like you to join him at the tea house. Please come with us." The bodyguard was huge, at least half a foot taller than me. He looked down at me with a slight, condescending tilt to his eyes. The corner of his mouth was turned up in a barely there smirk that was just plain unnerving. Mark immediately bristled. He let out a sarcastic laugh. "Well, look at this. Some dogs spend so much time with their master they start thinking they're people too. You act so high and mighty, but you should know your place. This isn't a garbage dump, so take your trash somewhere else. Mark's words were sharp and pointed, and his verbal assault left the bodyguard's face turning purple with rage. Mr. Miller, the bodyguard said through gritted teeth, my employer's invitation is sincere. I suggest you accept it, and control your friend, or you might end up offending the wrong people. I just sneered. When an ill-mannered stray dog starts barking at people, it's not out of line to yell at it. Why are you so angry? Did the shoe fit? After the bodyguard stormed off, his face livid, Mark turned to me with a raised eyebrow and a grin. I'm surprised you didn't stop me. I thought you were just going to take it again. I'm telling you, next time you see that jerk and his sugar mama, you need to give them a piece of your mind. It's the only way. I couldn't help but crack a smile. Yeah. When it comes to winning an argument, nobody's ever been able to beat you. The truth is, I've never really cared about Sophia or Evan. Because I don't care, I don't want to waste my breath on them. All Evan wants is to flaunt Sophia's affection in my face and throw a few insults my way. If I let that kind of in one ear and out the other nonsense get to me, life would be exhausting. I know you're just looking out for me, I said, but there's no point in getting worked up over people like him. Evan just wants me to be jealous. The best revenge is not giving him the satisfaction. I was glad my best friend had my back, but I didn't want him to get dragged into my mess. After all, Evan is clearly the arrogant type. After being insulted like that, he was definitely going to look for a way to get back at us. Liam, you have to try the tea here. Tell me if you like it. In the tea house, a smiling Evan directed the tea master to pour me a cup of hot tea. I'm sure anything from Mr. Hayes is top quality, I replied with a smile. It's just a shame that a simple guy like me doesn't have the palate to appreciate it. I'd heard Evan was a tea connoisseur, and that Sophia had bought him this entire tea house. She had also spent a fortune sourcing the finest teas from all over the country just for him. Everyone knew just how much Sophia doted on Evan. Evan didn't seem offended by my comment. Instead, a smirk played on his lips as he looked at me. I hear you've been looking for a job, Liam. Are you short on cash? Why didn't you just tell Sophia? She'd be upset if she knew. If you're too embarrassed to ask her, you can always come to me. I might not have much else, but I'm not short on money. Just say the word, and I'll take care of you. I pressed my lips together, looking at the black credit card he slid across the table. I almost had to laugh. I couldn't believe he was actually pulling the old buy off the rival trope from some cheap soap opera. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Hayes, but I prefer to earn my own way. My marriage to Sophia was a business arrangement. I've already received my compensation. I don't need anything more. I guess Sophia never told him about the terms of our arrangement, which would explain why he sees me as a threat. With that thought, I took off the jade ring Sophia's grandmother had given me on my wedding day and pushed it back across the table along with his credit card. My action left not only Evan stunned, but also his bodyguard, who looked on in surprise. Evan probably never imagined I would give up what he wanted so easily, but he accepted the ring with a smile. Liam, what are you saying? I've always looked up to you like a real brother. It's only right that I help you out when you're in a tough spot. I bet Evan had never encountered a rival as cooperative as me in his entire life. Before he could even make his next move, I had already bowed out. With things as they were, Evan should have been satisfied. He probably looked down on me, thinking I was a coward. And if that was the impression he had of me, then that was perfectly fine. Evan poured me another cup of tea himself. Liam, that's a nice necklace you have on. How about you sell it to me? At his words, my hand instinctively went to the chain around my neck. It's just a cheap thing I picked up somewhere. If you want a nice necklace, I'm sure Sophia would be happy to buy you a much better one. This necklace was a gift from the girl in my dreams. It's been with me for more than 10 years. Even though I can no longer clearly remember her face, there is no way I would ever part with this necklace. But Evan just chuckled, his eyes glinting with a possessive light. You should know, Liam, that when I want something, I always get it. Was he planning on taking it by force? My expression hardened. I stared at him blankly. I wouldn't get too greedy if I were you, Mr. Hayes. Evan was unfazed. With a wave of his hand, 2 bodyguards moved to flank me. One of them reached for my neck, but just as his fingers were about to touch my skin, I ducked, slid under the table, and came up right in front of Evan. Before anyone could react, I threw a left hook straight into his jaw. His pretty face immediately started to swell and turn red. Liam, Evan stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief and pure hatred. For the first time, I didn't back down. I grabbed his chin, forcing him to meet my gaze. Evan, just because I don't fight for things doesn't mean I'm a pushover. This time you crossed a line. With that, I let him go, watching the fear creep into his eyes before turning and walking out of the tea house without a second glance. It didn't take long for rumors to start spreading that Evan and I had gotten into a fistfight at the tea house, vying for Sophia's favor. So, when Sophia stormed into my room later that day, her face a mask of fury, I wasn't surprised at all. She was clearly here to get justice for Evan, and I was prepared for whatever she had in store. But instead of the expected tirade, her question was strained, tight with a different kind of anger. Our agreement, the jade ring my grandmother gave you just gave it all to Evan? I never expected that to be the first thing she'd say. But then I thought maybe she was planning to give it to Evan as a surprise after our year was up, and I had ruined it, making her angry. So I tried to explain. Sophia, there was never anything real between us. Mr. Hayes genuinely loves you, and I'm sure you don't want him to feel insecure or upset because of me. Liam, after all these years, did you really see our marriage as nothing more than a transaction? Are you that desperate to get away from me? I stared at her, completely baffled. I had no idea where this sudden rage was coming from. Wasn't it? I shot back. Weren't you the one who forced me into this marriage in the first place? There was a strange silence. Sophia froze for a second, a flicker of guilt in her eyes before she spoke again. Evan just wanted a necklace. You should have just given it to him. It's not like it's valuable. I'll buy you a new one, something much more expensive. Okay? Not possible, I said, my voice firm. You gave away a family heirloom worth millions without a second thought, but you won't part with one cheap necklace? Sophia's eyes narrowed, her gaze turning sharp and dangerous. Liam, don't tell me you've been accepting love tokens from someone else behind my back. Sophia, I've had this since I was a kid. It's my personal property. I think I have the right to refuse your attempts to bully me into giving it up. I met her gaze without flinching, my resolve unshaken. Please, Sophia, for the sake of the 5 years I spent taking care of you, don't make me end up hating you. Sophia's brow furrowed. Her eyes scanned my face for a long moment before she finally looked away. If you don't want people going after it, then don't be so conspicuous. With that, she turned and slammed the door behind her. I watched her leave, and for the first time in a long time, I felt my eyes begin to sting. In 5 years, it was the first time I had ever defied her. But to protect this necklace, I would do it again in a heartbeat, even if it meant burning the last bridge between us. It was just a shame that so much time had passed. I could no longer remember the face of the person who gave it to me, or where in the world she might be now. This necklace was the only thing I had left to remember her by. Thankfully, in the end, Sophia let it go. I heard that to make it up to Evan, Sophia bought him a one-of-a-kind necklace at an international auction, one that cost a fortune. Then, for his birthday, she gifted him a jewel-encrusted tiara from a European royal collection. Sophia's extravagant gestures for Evan were the talk of the town for weeks. And as her official, cuckolded husband, I became the object of everyone's pity. The next time I saw Evan, he was as arrogant and flashy as ever. The first thing I noticed was the new necklace hanging around his neck. "Hey, Liam," Mark whispered, his eyes wide. "Is that the necklace? The one that's supposedly one-of-a-kind and worth a fortune? Considering how much Sophia spoils him, I doubt she'd give him a fake. No wonder Sophia had given me that warning. This must have been her plan all along. Who knows?" I said, looking away and calmly taking my seat. But as soon as I sat down, I overheard the people at the next table talking about that very necklace. "It looks like Miss Thompson really is crazy about him, buying a necklace that expensive without even blinking. Tell me about it. That Hayes kid really lucked out, getting with her right after she recovered. You should keep your voice down. If the wrong person hears you, I can't help you." The voices trailed off. I glanced over and saw the two men who had been gossiping now staring at me, their faces flushed with embarrassment. They must have recognized who I was. I gave them a polite nod. "Please don't mind me. Continue. After all, the thing Evan was so proud of meant nothing to me. It wasn't worth arguing about." But in their eyes, my silence was mistaken for heartbreak, and the conversation died completely. I sighed to myself. It seemed I was stuck with this reputation until the divorce was final. The alliance between the Hayes family and Sophia's corporation had proven fruitful for both, and their influence was at an all-time high. Nearly everyone at the event was there to suck up to Evan. Even the same men who had been gossiping about him moments before were now showering him with flattery. I sat by myself, watching the spectacle from a distance. It was fine by me. Everyone was free to do their own thing. It was no wonder everyone said Sophia spoiled Evan. It wasn't just about the grand gestures. Every single dish and drink served at the party was one of his favorites. To go to such lengths, you'd have to be madly in love. I realized I'd finished my drink. As I stood up to get another, a delicate, pale hand gently stopped me. "Liam, I remember you've always had a sensitive stomach. You should probably drink less. I looked up sharply, and my eyes fell on a familiar face, one I hadn't seen in years. Chloe. Seeing the face that had been locked away in my memory for so long, I thought for a moment that I must be dreaming. I instinctively reached out, wanting to touch her face to make sure she was real, but I pulled my hand back, afraid. Is it really you, Chloe? It's me, she said, taking my hand in hers. The cool touch of her skin grounded me, and my heart finally settled. I'm sorry I'm late. I slowly shook my head, still in disbelief. The person I had spent years searching for was suddenly standing right in front of me. You're still the same, aren't you? She said softly, always looking a little lost. Chloe reached out and gently squeezed my earlobe, sighing. Mark told me things haven't been easy for you with the Thompson family, that you've been putting up with a lot. Are you an idiot? If someone gives you trouble, you give it right back. Did you forget everything I taught you? All these years and you haven't changed a bit. I'm not being bullied. I'm fine, I said, grabbing her hand and holding it tight. I had a million questions for her, but I knew this wasn't the time or place. My eyes shifted to Mark, who had been lurking sheepishly behind Chloe the whole time. That traitor. So he really had been bought off, acting as a mole all this time. On the empty second-floor terrace of the mansion, Chloe and I stood side by side, neither of us saying a word. Mark had already volunteered to stand guard at the top of the stairs, to give us some privacy, as he put it. After a long silence, I was the one who finally spoke. Chloe, where have you been all these years? I've been looking for you. I'm sorry, Liam, she said, a troubled look in her eyes. I can't tell you where I've been, not yet, but I can tell you this. I've always been keeping an eye on you, which meant that all these years, Chloe had known everything about me and Sophia. I pressed my lips together. A moment ago, I had 1,000 questions, but now they were all caught in my throat, choking me. The only thing I managed to ask, my voice a little awkward, was, "So, why are you here tonight?" "Because I couldn't wait any longer," she said, her voice tight with anger. "I couldn't stand by and watch what Sophia and that Evan were doing to you." I was taken aback. Couldn't wait. The Chloe I remembered was just like me and Mark, from an ordinary family living in a low-income housing project. But the woman standing in front of me now clearly came from a family whose wealth and influence rivaled the Thompsons. A person doesn't just become that rich and powerful overnight, unless, of course, they were at the top to begin with. Following that train of thought, I think I was starting to understand why Chloe had disappeared for all those years. The thought eased some of the anxiety that had been building in my chest. As long as she hadn't chosen to leave me, that was all that mattered. Whatever her reasons were, if she was willing to tell me, I would understand. But Chloe didn't elaborate on her own story. Instead, she looked me in the eye and made a promise. "Liam, trust me. Just give me a little more time, and I swear I will get you away from Sophia." Unlike Sophia's deep, cold voice, Chloe's was naturally soft and gentle. Especially when she made a promise, you couldn't help but believe her. "Okay," I nodded, almost without thinking. "I'll wait for you." The story of how I ended up married to Sophia is almost comical. I was at the hospital with Mark for his annual physical when I ran into Sophia, fresh from the car accident that had supposedly turned her into a simpleton. At that moment, her cousin Jessica was in the middle of humiliating her. As I walked past her room, Sophia rushed out, threw her arms around me, and wouldn't let go. The next thing I knew, I was dragged into the middle of their family's power struggle. Then Sophia showed up at my parents' house with her grandmother, announcing she wanted to marry me. When I refused, they went to work on my parents. After a combination of threats and promises, I had no choice but to agree to the marriage contract. For 5 years, while I was technically her husband, in reality, I was nothing more than a glorified babysitter, taking care of the simple-minded Sophia. In return, Sophia and her grandmother secretly funneled a lot of money to my family. That's why my parents were so against the divorce. It's easy to get used to a life of luxury, but much harder to give it up. After getting a taste of the good life, my parents refused to go back to a world where they had to budget carefully just to take a simple vacation. If she hadn't slapped me with divorce papers the moment she recovered, demanding I step aside for Evan, I might never have gotten out. Lying in bed that night, my mind kept replaying the events of the last few years. Lately, Sophia and Evan had become inseparable. In the public eye, I was completely irrelevant. This was a good thing. With the Hayes family's support, Sophia's position was secure, and no one dared to openly challenge her anymore. Maybe our contract could even end ahead of schedule. Just as I was lost in thought, my bedroom door suddenly swung open, and a figure stepped inside. I shot up in bed, and before I could even reach for the lamp, I was surrounded by a familiar presence. Liam. In the dim light filtering in from the hallway, I could see Sophia looking down at me, her expression surprisingly soft. "Liam," she whispered, her arms wrapping around me. "It's been so long since I've held you like this." Back when she was playing the simpleton, she used to have nightmares every night. She would sneak into my room and beg me to stay with her until she fell asleep. If I refused, she would just hold my hand and repeat my name over and over until I finally gave in. Back then, I just thought of her as a spoiled younger sister. I would stay until she was asleep, then spend the rest of the night on the sofa, sneaking back to my own room before dawn. Sophia probably never knew, but what was wrong with her tonight? Why was she here, putting on this deeply affectionate act instead of being with Evan? "Liam, please don't leave me, okay?" Jessica holds over 40% of the company's stock, and a third of the other shareholders are on her side. "I need the Hayes family's support. You have to understand that, right? The only reason I gave you those divorce papers was because I was angry. I knew there was someone else in your heart, and I just wanted you to finally see me." She reeked of alcohol, and her hot breath on my neck as she spoke made my skin crawl. "Sophia, can we talk about this when you're not lying on top of me?" I said, trying to push her away, but she only held on tighter. "No, Liam, ever since I went back to the office, you've refused to even have a proper conversation with me. I saw you with that other woman today. Are you really planning on leaving me?" She nuzzled her cheek against mine. "I know I've put you through a lot, but I need the Hayes family to truly secure my position at the company. Even if I marry Evan a year from now, you will always be the one I love most." I had never seen such a tender look in Sophia's eyes before, but instead of being moved, I just felt a deep sense of dread. She never had any intention of letting me go. "No, Sophia, get off me," I said, panicking as her face moved closer to mine. Just as I was about to physically push her off, there was a frantic knocking at the door. Ms. Thompson, you need to get over to Mr. Hayes's place. His staff just called. He's drunk and making a huge scene because you're not there. They said even the bodyguards can't control him." Sophia went rigid, her brow furrowing in annoyance. After a long moment, she planted a kiss on my forehead and reluctantly got up. "I'll go see what's wrong. If you're tired, go ahead and sleep. We can finish this conversation when I get back." But she was gone for more than a week. When I finally saw Sophia again, she looked completely worn out. Maybe Evan, spoiled by her constant indulgence, had become too much for her to handle. But none of that was my problem. I had plans to go hiking with Chloe to watch the sunset, so I just gave the silent figure of Sophia on the couch a quick glance and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Sophia's voice cut through the silence as she lunged over the back of the sofa and grabbed my arm. "Our agreement doesn't include me reporting my whereabouts to you," I said, prying her fingers off my arm. "So please let go." I tried to move past her. "No, you can't go," she cried, a look of pure panic on her face. I had rarely seen her so openly emotional, not even the time she was pushed into a lake and I, despite not knowing how to swim, jumped in and saved her, only to end up with a raging fever myself. Even though I knew now that her simple-mindedness had been an act, her worry for me back then had been real. "Is it Chloe? Are you going to leave with her?" "You can't go. Liam, I'm telling you, you are not leaving. I forbid you from leaving me. I forbid it." Her eyes were bloodshot, and her grip on my shoulders tightened, as if she was ready to break my legs if I tried to defy her. I understood her absurd possessiveness, but I refused to accept it. It was like taking a toy from a child. Even if it wasn't one she particularly liked, she would still scream that it was hers. To Sophia, I was the man who had taken care of her for 5 years. In her mind, I had become her property. "Sophia, don't you think this is pointless?" I sighed, stopped struggling, and turned to face her, looking her directly in the eyes. I was done playing her games. If you hadn't resorted to those tactics in the first place, I never would have gotten mixed up with you. I played my part as your dutiful husband for 5 years. You've gotten everything you wanted. What more could you possibly want from me? "Liam." Sophia was speechless. After a moment, she finally spoke, her voice full of disbelief. "I know it was wrong of me to drag you into my family's drama, but you took such good care of me for 5 years. I thought you must have cared about me at least a little." "Sophia, don't forget this was a transaction," I said, my face a blank mask. "You paid me and I took care of you. That was the deal. I don't think anyone in their right mind falls in love with their captor." Did she really think this was some kind of romance novel? That we were living out some forced marriage to true love fantasy? "Don't be ridiculous, Sophia. Your infidelity alone was enough to extinguish any spark of affection I might have ever felt for you. Do you know why I never cared about Evan's little provocations? It's because I don't care about you. To me, the two of you are nothing more than a sideshow." With that, I pried her hands off me one last time, shouldered my pack, and walked out of her house without looking back. 1 year later. Did you hear? Sophia Thompson, the head of the Thompson Corporation, is marrying that young heir from the Hayes family next month. Are you sure about that? I heard things have gotten pretty ugly between the Hayes and Thompson families lately. My uncle is a gardener for the Hayes family, and he told me he overheard that young Mr. Hayes and Miss Thompson had a massive fight in the garden. Something about her seeing someone else. What? If that's true, this is going to be good. Wasn't he the other man in the first place? I guess what goes around comes around. Serves him right. Once a cheater, always a cheater. That Hayes kid is just reaping what he sowed. Oh, and get this, I also heard the new guy looks a lot like her ex-husband. You don't think? I think I'd better sell my stock in the Hayes Corporation. At this rate, they're going to run that company straight into the ground. I was at an auction when I overheard the conversation from the table next to me. I paused my phone call for a second before continuing, speaking softly into the receiver. Don't rush. Drive safe. Okay, came the reply. If you see anything you like, just bid on it. Consider it an early birthday present from me. It was Chloe's voice, warm and gentle as always. I smiled, told her to be safe one more time, and hung up. My mind drifted back to the conversation I'd overheard. Sophia and Evan getting married next month? I wasn't particularly surprised. After our final confrontation a year ago, I had moved in with Mark. No matter how many times Sophia tried to contact me, I kept my distance. Eventually, she stopped trying. I didn't see her again until the day our divorce was finalized, standing on the steps of the courthouse. She looked like she wanted to say something, but Evan kept pulling at her arm, so we just signed the papers in a hurry. So she went out and found a lookalike to replace me? What was that? Some kind of performance of undying love? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I didn't think I could ever look at her the same way again. Not that we were likely to see each other again anyway. After the divorce, I got back on my feet and started working at Chloe's company. And just as I had suspected, Chloe's background was far from simple. The reason she had been living in that low-income project with us all those years ago was because it was a test, a trial set by her wealthy family for their heir. But after seeing me get tangled up with Sophia, Chloe had chosen to undertake a different, faster trial, also she could build up enough power to take on the Thompson family. For the 5 years I was married to Sophia, Chloe had been watching over me from the shadows. And her most effective spy was none other than Mark, the traitor. He knew I was looking for her the whole time and never said a word. Have you been waiting long? I hadn't even noticed Chloe sit down beside me until she handed me a warm cup of coffee. It's getting chilly, she said. This should warm you up. I snapped out of my thoughts and looked into her gentle eyes, a teasing smile on my face. Your hands are freezing too. Why didn't you get one for yourself? Once your hands are warm, I can just hold them to warm mine up, she replied, completely serious. The smile on my face grew even wider. Chloe had proposed to me several times since my divorce, but I had never accepted. For one, I was just getting out of a failed marriage, and I couldn't be sure that life with her powerful family wouldn't be just as chaotic as it had been with the Thompsons. And even if Chloe's feelings for me were real, what if it was just a lingering obsession from her childhood, a desire for something she couldn't have back then? I wasn't about to waste another 5 years of my life on another Sophia, and second, there was a gap of several years between us. We had both changed, and our lives had taken different paths. I thought it was better to just see how things went. If after some time we both still felt the same way, then we could talk about what comes next. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Sophia and Evan walk in, hand in hand. Neither of them looked happy. In fact, Sophia had a fresh bruise at the corner of her lip, as if they'd just had an argument on the way over. But seeing Sophia looking so miserable, I felt a sense of relief. Someone like her deserved to be with a drama king like Evan. Chloe, I said, turning to her suddenly. Aren't you going on a business trip soon? Yes, just for a project meeting. I'll be back in 3 days, tops. Is there anything you want me to bring back for you, Liam? Chloe had been toying with my fingers, but when she spoke, she looked me right in the eye the way she always did. It was the little things like that that always got to me. They say you can see love in someone's eyes, that no matter how good the disguise, the truth eventually comes out in the details. Chloe was different. With me, she was always completely genuine. Well, I said, nodding seriously, there is one thing I'd like you to bring back for me. Name it, she said, raising an eyebrow and pressing a soft kiss to my fingertips. Whatever you want, I'll make it happen. I pretended to think about it for a moment, and as I saw her expression grow tense, I broke into a wide grin. How about on the day you get back, you bring me a bouquet of flowers and a ring? What? She asked, still processing my words. You can't do it, I teased, poking her cheek. I was thinking that if you could manage that, I might just agree to marry you." The words were barely out of my mouth before Chloe's face lit up with pure joy. Forgetting where we were, she threw her arms around me in a tight hug. "I can do that. I can do that," she repeated, her voice filled with a dazed, ecstatic joy. I let her hold me, ignoring the surprised stares from the people around us, and hugged her back with a smile. "Then it's a deal," I said. "I'll be waiting for you."